Hello Muggles and Wizards alike, I'm Lex at LexReads, and today we're going to be talking about Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. I'm currently doing an entire reread of the Harry Potter series, book 1 to 7 in order, and I promised in my May wrap-up June TBR and also in my book talk for the first video, which will be linked down below, that I'm going to do a video talking about every single one of these books. And I'm not going to back out of that. So here we are talking about book 2. Alright, so yeah, without further ado, let's just get into it. I gave this a 5 out of 5 stars on Goodreads. I also gave the first one a 5 out of 5 on Goodreads. I liked this one more, and I am starting to recall that when I was younger, at least, the first book was not even kind of one of my favorites. Like, it was in my bottom 2, I think. Like, it was my second to least favorite book in the series. When I reread it, I super enjoyed it, more than I think I did when I was younger. But this one I did, in fact, enjoy more. So that hasn't changed. I really think the pacing was a little bit better in this one. I know I talked about pacing in my last video on the last one. I just feel like there was way more action throughout the book in this one, which I appreciate more, right? Like, in the second chapter, we already have some legitimate action, what with Dobby coming in and messing all the stuff up for Harry, is really what he does. So starting on page 15, we've got some really legitimate action, and then it keeps happening, right? Like, we got the Weasleys coming in to break him out of his house in the car. We've got them not being able to get through the platform, so they steal the car and they fly there themselves. Like, it was way more action-packed, and there was a lot less exposition, which I appreciate. Because while I don't necessarily think the 50 pages of exposition was a bad thing in the first one, it definitely, to me, felt like 50 pages of exposition. And this one was 20 pages of exposition, which is way, easier to swallow, in my opinion. But of course, as in pretty much all of the books in this series, there's a really intense chunk, the climax of the story, and pretty much all of these are very late set, right? So in a 400-page Harry Potter book, they're they don't go into the Chamber of Secrets. That doesn't happen until the last 25% or so of the book itself. So the falling action always has about 10 pages, and the climax happens at the end. It's almost the very end every time, and thus far I've read through, I'm in the middle of the 4th book, but thus far I've seen that as true, and it continues to be true, and I'll, if it changes in the later books, I will comment on that. But as of right now, what I've found is that pacing-wise, this one was better pacing for me because there was more, small action throughout the book, and then the, big climactic, intense part of action is still at the end, but it feels less rushed because it built better. Let's talk a little bit about the plot. I love the plot of this book. I think the plot of this book is a really, really cool idea. Sure, there's a whodunit in the first book, kind of, except instead of a whodunit, it's a who should we be afraid of because we should be afraid of someone, right? There's this knowledge that something is happening and you should be afraid of it. The characters should be afraid of it. It's a big thing and they should be worried about it. But in this one, it's a legitimate whodunit. So, it starts off with Dobby being like, Harry Potter, you are not safe. And he's like, dude, leave me alone. I'm gonna go. I'm not gonna stay here. Screw you. Then, we get to school and we're having these, Chamber of Secrets problems pretty soon into the school year. I remember the first time I read this book, I was shocked a little bit by, like, I wasn't like shocked as in I had not seen it coming at all, but I was like really surprised that Ginny was technically the culprit. Like, it was technically Ginny's fault, because if it hadn't been for Ginny, the chamber like couldn't have opened, because it was all her bidding. You know, she was killing the chickens, roosters, they were roosters. She was killing the roosters, she was painting on the wall, she, you know, hung up Miss Norris. You know, she did a lot of stuff, and I think that was a really cool character choice for good old Joan to make. And I think a lot of people ignore how much that influences Ginny's character in the future, which I will talk about again in the future videos. I promise we'll get there. We'll talk more about it. I think the whole, like, Hagrid conspiracy, where they're low-key like, was Hagrid the heir of Slytherin? Like, holy crap. It's sad, but it's also kind of fun. I think that also influences a lot of Hagrid's character. And just, you know, Tom Riddle is... I actually think Tom Riddle is a super interesting character. Tom, in my brain, even though he is the same character as Voldemort, in my brain they're separate because they act differently. Like, Tom and Voldemort are the same person, but they're different characters, if that makes sense. Like, they have different personalities, they go about things differently, which, I mean, that makes sense, right? You as a 16-year-old is not going to be the same as you as... I don't know how old Voldemort is. We're just gonna say a solid, like, 50-ish. But, you know, that's 20-something years to make, like, drastic changes to your personality. And for Voldemort, it's for the worse. But this is the first time we really get any backstory on Voldemort, and I think it was a really clever way to bring in that backstory. You know, as for continuing on the talking a little bit about characters trend, I think all of the main characters are better in the book. All of the, like, 3 protagonists, so Harry, Hermione, and Ron, I think they're all, like, better, more round characters in this book than they are in the first book. Hermione's not unbearable, which makes me glad, because in the first book I was like, wow, she's kind of really annoying. And I felt really bad about it, because I like Hermione. Draco is, if it's possible, even more of a little shit in this book. Which makes me sad, because I know I said this in my first one too. He's kind of one of my favorite characters, but in the first 2 books she's written him very, very flat. Which, I haven't reread the beginning of the series in such a long time that I forgot how flat he starts. And she rounds him out later. Like, she adds dimension to his character later. And through the first 3 books at least, he's just kind of a piece of shit. I really, to this day, think that Dumbledore hired Lockhart because he was like, well, this will be interesting. Like, I just can't figure out another reason that he would do that. Yeah, I really enjoyed this book, but I actually don't have a ton to say about it. This is the book of the 3 that I've finished so far that I, like, I mean, it's good. Like, that's pretty much all I have to say about it, right? It's like, I think it's a really important part for character development, and I think the character development, like, as far as how it propels the characters forward in future stories, I think this book is really important in that regard. But other than that, like, I don't think it's as, like, deep as some of the other ones. So yeah. Thank you guys for watching. I'm sorry I didn't have as much to say about this one, but I do hope that you come on back for my next video. As of right now, I have a tentative schedule of posting every Sunday and Wednesday through the summer, so if this is a Sunday, see you Wednesday, and if this is a Wednesday, see you next week. Bye, guys.